All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Maura McDonald-Brown, and this is Laura Campagna, the Wednesday Witch. And we are doing our third recording for Chirons Key. And today we are going to answer some questions about just like an introduction to astrology. Laura, you are going to pull up a chart of someone I think all know and I think all love. And we're gonna see where the time we have together takes us, but there was some preparation done for today. So hold on to your seats. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that people should know before we settle in?
No, that's great, Mara. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you. And I think that, part of this came out of the fact that we jumped into the deep end with our first episode of Chirons Key, talking about astrology, talking about therapeutics. And what was really cool and interesting was that a lot of folks from your community who are therapists and friends and wanted more basics about astrology. And that's fabulous. It's really, I love the way that society and the collective as a whole is just really immersing ourselves in this ancient practice and knowledge. And so I'm excited to do that overview, provide that overview for folks and deepen everybody's general understanding.
Yeah, same. And I also just really enjoyed that people asked a lot of questions that I hadn't thought of or questions that I didn't know that I can now pretend I knew the whole time.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that I will pull up a birth chart. I'm going to just kind of give a general overview first and talk about, how it is that astrology can describe something as intricate, specific, and individual as a person's life journey, which is, an unknown length of time and generations and, world events. So, I'm happy to start. So when we think about astrology, we think about the fact that humans for thousands of years on Earth were looking up at the night sky, and because there was not electricity and people even in cities, it was dark, had a really clear view of what was going on. And anyone who's ever gone camping or had the opportunity to sleep out under the stars knows how fascinating that play going on up there is. I once got to sleep out under the Milky Way. I could see the Milky Way when I was sleeping on the top of a houseboat in Lake Shasta, and that was a transcendent spiritual experience. Yeah. So the night sky, I sometimes jokingly refer to it as the original television, but for thousands of years, because like
it's an astrology joke.
It's a maybe very American joke. I don't know. Love TV. But for thousands of years, that was what humans were looking at and observing. And the observational process was pretty detailed and specific. And people began to notice that when there were certain stars or certain planets above us, that it correlated to certain events on Earth. So just fundamentally, astrology is the study between the movements of the planets up in heaven and events that take place on Earth. And the correlations between them are really incredible and give rise to a feeling that we live in a universe imbued with intelligence and meaning. When you can see pattern in something, then it gives you an insight that there's something larger going on. And so astrology is also connected to a cosmology, a way of understanding where we are located in the solar system. And yeah, it's an invitation to consider, or it offers a framework of like, what are we doing here on Earth, and how do we make sense of our lives, which take us through so many different cycles and phases, and are contradictory, complex, painful, joyful, ecstatic, horrendous, you know, like what it's like a full life contains everything. And I think part of what astrology can give us an appreciation for is the fullness of life. I've also said this a lot, that I think, you know, growing up in the United States, being told that, you know, one of our rights is the pursuit of happiness. I really like that idea. And I really want everyone to live in a peaceful, just, and free society where they can pursue their individual happiness. But I also think that happiness isn't actually a very good pursuit.
Yeah.
Because it's always fleeting. And it's temporary, it doesn't last. And part of what astrology teaches us is that we live in a world that is always changing. In the material realm, things are always coming into being and passing away. And so it provides us, again, with a framework or a lens to understand the cycles of our life as we're going through them. Because if somebody comes to me as an astrologer and they're like, hey, I really want to meet someone. What do you see in my chart? Romantic dating situation. And I look and I'm like, woo, this person has so much activity going on around career. It looks like their career could take off, that like there's like big energy here, and success, you know, and possibly money, things that people really in general care about. And I say to them, okay, great. Thanks for that. I'm glad to know what you want. And also what's going on in this area of your life, because this looks like where there's a lot of movement and action. And people will sometimes be like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's happening. Yeah, I've worked really hard. Things that I've been building towards for years are going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, the human nature is such that we are constantly seeking the next thing, you know, we rarely rest in satisfaction. And
yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
It reminds me of our talk last time with Lorraine about presence, and just even when your introduction, and just how, you know, years ago we were so connected to the night sky. And I remember reading once that humans used to wake up, like go to sleep for 4 hours and then wake up in the middle of the night and like do their business, like be it like, you know, have sex or have a second meal, or, you know, the article didn't say like go stargaze, but I think just like what else are you going to do, you know? So I feel like the like presence and connection to the world around you, but then also in like the example you're giving, just presence to like what's going on in your life, versus like that pursuit of happiness that like we tell ourselves we'll be happier if and when this happens, rather than like what opening up to what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, astrology is connected to many different philosophical kind of schools of thought, but one of them is the Stoics. And the idea was that with Stoicism, that you know, we think of someone who's Stoic, they're like, oh. But you know, with Stoicism, that part of the idea is that acceptance is the answer, and that you can, if something difficult is happening to you, and you look at a chart, you know, and this is another thing that happens. Folks will come to me. They won't tell me anything about why they wanted to book a reading. And I'll just be like, oh, it looks like really hard stuff was going on with your parents for the last 2 years. And then they'll start to cry and they'll say, you know, my father passed away or something like that. It's really deeply meaningful to get that confirmation from a total stranger. You know, I have no way of knowing these things, and I also have no agenda. My only kind of someone, as a reader, what I'm offering people is ideally loving presence, right? A compassionate space where they can be themselves, and also a reflection of what I see going on in their life that I should hypothetically have no way of being able to understand. And the idea is that there's this ancient quote that I really like, that I learned from one of my teachers, Chris Brennan, who I took his ancient astrology class. It's really good, which I highly recommend. And it said, because the greatest good vexes man as equally as the greatest evil, we study the stars.
Mm,
I'm probably not
wow.
getting the translation exactly correct, but the idea is that humans have a hard time with change, even
Mm,
though it's literally the basis for our material existence. It's not easy for us. Even really good things that happen are stressful. Even things we pray for, we work for, we want, can be difficult to accept, to appreciate, to go through, to be present for, to sit with in the moment. So, going back to the example of someone who is excited about they're finding out what's going on in their love life, and I'm seeing that there's a lot of stuff going on with their career. What I think the astrology of that moment is offering them is the ability to sit with
mm,
what is actually going on, and an invitation to accept, this is what I want, but this is what's happening. And if I'm with what's happening, I can be more present for it. I can appreciate it more. I can accept it more. I can probably act from a place of greater kind of intelligence in my response, and freedom. And also, sometimes you look at someone's chart and you're like, I don't really see a lot of activity in the area that you want for a while, but can you be with what is?
yeah.
And ideally astrology helps with that. So
I have two questions.
yes, please.
One is, and this is okay. One is high level, and one is sort of more personal.
Mhm.
So, from a high level perspective, um, when you're saying like you're seeing this in people's chart, just for the folks who are totally new to astrology, is that something you'll go over when you do pull up
Yep. Mhm.
our friend's
Yep.
chart? Okay, so people will understand what you mean by that. And then, just as a personal question, I'm just curious because I do think you're so right that we all struggle so much with change. Has being so educated and immersed and so intelligent, and from my perspective about astrology, made you um more like more accepting of change in general, maybe not in your personal life, but just like in the world at large? Like, do you have a different relationship with change and its meaning?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yes, astrology really helped me. I will say that I was someone who, I started getting astrology readings when I was young, like in my 20s. And I guess it's maybe not young to some people. People are getting
That's
into the
young.
game. They're getting into astrology in their teens and even younger now, which is amazing. But I got into astrology. I was exposed to it growing up, but I actually didn't like it.
Mm,
I'm I'm a double Scorpio. My son is in Capricorn. I'm happy to share those kind of things, but I wore this because we're doing our astrology fundamentals, and I didn't like what they said. I was like,
yeah.
don't talk about me like that. That's not true. I'm not like that. And some of it actually took time. It took like maturation for me to be like, oh, I am someone who really likes working as a Capricorn, or I am really interested in deep transformational healing experiences, as a Scorpio. So I think it both helped me to accept my own fundamental nature. And then also, I really dove in and committed myself to astrology during a time of my life when there was really intense things happening. And it allowed me to understand, I got a couple of readings during that time, and it just nailed what was going on for me. Again, by
Mhm.
strangers who would have no way of knowing what was going on. So I do really find this to be a compelling framework, and it's one that works for a lot of people and it doesn't work for others. So that's the other thing, is that, if astrology speaks to you, I say go towards it with everything that you have that excites you. And if it doesn't, then there is something, I believe there's something else out there that will speak to you, because there's billions of people on earth, and it doesn't make sense that like everything would work for everyone. But I do believe there is something for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, one last comment or question and then I'll stop. Um, but I think it's interesting because, like, from what I understand about astrology and what I've learned from you over the years about astrology is like this is a science. I mean, I think there's like a lot of intuition and a lot of talent and interpretation, but um, you're basing your information off like knowledge and wisdom that has been around for thousands of years and has been kind of understood for thousands of years. And so it's interesting because I feel like some people will go to a psychic and have kind of a similar experience of like the stranger shouldn't know these things, but that's a very different sort of it's similar in that it's like tapping into collective wisdom. But I think what's interesting and sets astrology apart, at least from my understanding, and I'd love to hear pushback or agreement, is that astrology is in my perspective, pretty like scientific.
Yeah, I love kind of how you're framing this. Astrology is to me, it's an observational science. It's a science that we culled the information, humans looking up and agreeing. There kind of has to be a collective agreement, or it wouldn't actually um work, I don't think. But it isn't something that can be proven with the scientific method. So it isn't a science. To me,
Mm,
it's an esoteric art. So
okay.
we're exploring a mystery, but there's a really deep foundation for it. And because in the West, astrology has been suppressed at times, libraries have been destroyed, so much knowledge has been lost. And part of what's amazing about this, moment of astrological popularity is that it's coinciding with all of these ancient texts that only became available in the 80s and have been getting translated. And so we're in this moment of a revival where there's actually access to information that humans haven't really been able to, at least in the West, unpack and engage with for a long time. We think about this like Hellenistic astrology as being in the Hellenistic era. Yeah, a couple thousand years ago. So it's really exciting to me to think about what would it be like if we started to engage with the world from the perspective of it being enchanted or
Mm,
sold, that idea that there is a spark of life in all living things, that we all, as we were talking about in a previous with our previous discussion with Lorraine, we all come from the source, but we're all having an individual experience. So we can, then start to see the greater meaning in the little small details. And I think astrology gives us a window into that, but it cannot be proven. People have done studies and it doesn't work. And I love that. Like, as a witch and as someone who's more interested in magic, I don't care. And I'm not
yeah,
interested in what the patriarchy tells me is true.
yeah,
Like, I like science and I got my vaccine, but I'm not interested in patriarchy telling me that like Pluto isn't a planet, or there's like
right.
a new constellation I have to consider. It doesn't matter to me. I'm interested in what for thousands of years humans have agreed upon. And the last thing I'll just say is that, when you engage with astrology, it opens you up to, I think people are going to bring what their own background to it. So for me, I came to it looking for healing and I found healing. And it opened me up to many things, including greater healing. But I think a lot of folks come to it from being practicing therapists. and it deepens that. Some people come to it specifically. There's all these different kinds of astrology. One of them is called horary, where you can ask a question like, "Where's my cat?" or "Where's my keys?" or "Where did I leave my wallet?" And it can give you answers. So I really also think what you want out of astrology is where it will meet you. And there is like a branch of astrology for everyone. Like there's medical astrology. It's very cool. So,
Interesting. I never knew.
yeah. So I'm happy to pull up the chart now and just kind of give a little bit of a mini overview. And so I chose the chart of Barack Obama.
Our close personal friend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Just because I thought people would know who Barack is. Okay. So this is a map of the heavens from the perspective of Earth at the moment of Barack Obama's birth. And, this is the divine blueprint for Barack Obama's life. And when you ask, the question of, do we choose to come in at a certain time? Do we choose our path? That's not something where there's like consensus. And I personally feel like this is the blueprint that was created by the divine. And this is our cosmic jumping off point. And we have free will. We get to make decisions within this context, but it describes the path we're walking, the tools in our backpack, the gifts and talents we came to share, and also where our soul intends to evolve and grow through struggle and challenge. So again, a full life contains everything. It doesn't just contain, astrology is not just telling us where the happiness and the parties and the cupcakes are going down. It's telling us where everything's going down. And you have to be willing to see it all if you want to really go fully into this. Like, you have to be willing to entertain the fact that like a full life contains everything.
Yeah.
So we look at, I wanted to just get out my little lavender pencil that I've been using so much on the Zoom, and say that it'll let me use this. So what we see here is that it's actually not okay. This little kind of round donut over here is the sun, represents where the sun was when Barack Obama was born. And so the sun in astrology is considered to represent your soul. And so all of these, this is a chart and it has glyphs on it, and each glyph corresponds to a planet, and each planet has signification. So the sun represents your soul's reason for incarnating in this lifetime, where you came to shine and what you came to share. So there's a lot more that can be said. We could do a whole day-long workshop on the sun, but just, generally.
And that's the one that everyone's usually most familiar with. Like everyone knows that they're an Aries or a Capricorn or a Cancer.
Exactly. And what's amazing about the sun is that it has regular motion. And so the sun, it like, there's a little bit of variance with the Gregorian calendar, but the sun generally enters the signs at the same time every year. There's maybe a couple days of difference. And so generally everyone born on August 4th when Barack Obama was born, is a Leo. And so it's really easy. Part of the reason sun sign astrology became so popular is because it's really easy to like identify where the sun is, because it's at the same place every year.
Yeah.
And in astrology, that which is regular and constant in its motion is seen to be more like the divine. And the sun in particular is considered the implantation of divinity within each of us. So it's that traveler through all the lifetimes. It's that part of us that is eternal and has always been here, kind of witnessing this experience, even as they're changing. So the sign, which is this little glyph right here, is the style in which you're going to do your sun's work. And the house, which you can see the numbers here, are the topics of relevance or importance in the life. And so Barack Obama has his sun in the fire sign of Leo. And, Leo is the sign of the king, the ruler, the leader, the braveheart, the one who defends its pride. And when we think about Leo, we think about someone who can inspire and lead the people. And, Barack Obama literally ran on a platform of hope. Like that was the catchphrase for his presidency. And so Barack has, although his career, very important, very significant to himself and in his life, he has his sun in the 7th house of marriage and long-term committed partnerships. So we know that, yeah, I know.
I mean, but everyone loves Michelle so much, so this makes total sense.
Everyone loves Michelle so much. It's true. And Michelle is a powerhouse in her own way, and a light and a leader. So we know that part of Barack's, for the fulfillment of his destiny is who he is going to be in relationship with. It's extremely significant. Doesn't mean he's not himself without his relationship, but it's an important part of how he comes to know himself and expresses himself. And so there's a lot of other stuff going on in his 7th house, but I'm just going to talk about the sun, the moon, and the rising to give the folks at home just a sense of, okay, when people say they say that I'm, a Libra, but I don't feel like I'm a Libra, or that doesn't really match me. And that's because, having your sun somewhere is just 1/3 of your astrological identity. The other 2 parts are really significant. Your astrological identity is made up of 3 parts. And so if you don't know the other 2 parts, it can feel like a really incomplete picture. So,
and also what I'm getting for the first time, I think, is that it also really dependent on what house it's in. And that is a whole nother conversation that maybe we'll get into probably over several kind of chats that we have together.
Yeah.
But not everyone who is a Leo is going to have their sun in the 10th house.
In the 7th house.
Sorry, 7th house.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. You don't have to get it right. You're not an astrologer. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And thanks for pointing that out. This, and I'm actually going to get to that with the ascendant, but so the sun is the soul's reason for incarnating in this lifetime, where you came to shine, what you came to share. And the moon, which is this beautiful little glyph right here, represents your physical body, your emotional body, how you relate to your feelings, the body of the person who brought you into this world, the way you were nurtured growing up, and your own style of nurturing. So the moon is extremely significant. And I think there's a lot more that can be said about the sun and the moon in the chart, but to keep it simple, I'll say that the moon plays a very important role, and Barack Obama has his moon in Gemini, and Gemini is the sign of the twins and communication. And we know that Barack is a really powerful orator, and someone who can speak from the heart and can communicate things in a way that really meets people and hits them in an emotional place. And the Gemini is always ruled by Mercury, and this Mercury in Barack's chart is in Leo in the 7th house. So there is this really strong connection again to this Leo sun, and to the fact that Barack is going to be able to authentically express who he understands himself to be on a spiritual level through this Gemini moon that's going to be able to meet people in a personal place. And he has his moon in Gemini in the 5th house of creativity, art, theater, sports, children, sexuality. And we know that he has 2 children. He seems like he is an engaged and cool dad.
Yeah.
And also he loves sports. He talks about his love of sports, but he also, under his presidency did a lot for the arts. And that was, a lot of artists really came out in support of him and can have continued to do so. So we see that Barack's Gemini moon in and of itself is playing a role in terms of, okay, most folks who have their moon in Gemini are going to need to talk out their feelings. They're going to need to have someone who feels like a trusted confidant or a friend. They're going to be external processors, and they might not actually fully know how they feel about something until they talk it out with someone. So that's, again, putting an extra emphasis on the importance of his sun in the 7th. So I would imagine that who he's doing that talking with is his trusted business advisors and his partner.
Okay. I have a question for you, and it might be a bit of a tangent, but now it's just a genuine curiosity question. So would you expect, given what you're saying, that if you were to do Michelle's chart, that you would see a similar sort of prominence in her 7th house?
I would expect to see something significant around the 7th house, but I think what's interesting about astrology is a lot of people want astrology to validate who they understand themselves to be and who they understand other people to be. And part of what astrology does is actually open up our conceptualization of ourselves and other folks. So if we looked at Michelle's chart and it didn't tell us, which I have looked at it before, I just don't remember anything, but it did tell us, I think she's a Capricorn, which is obviously part of why she's so cool. But it didn't tell us, we didn't see what we expected to see about her 7th house. That would be confirmation that we don't really know her.
Yeah.
And it would be a window into more about who she really is. You know what I mean? Because I get the sense from Michelle that she's doing a lot behind the scenes and holding things back for a lot of reasons. So
Yeah.
that's a really good question. One of the cool things that I have seen time and time again that it freaks people out and makes them believe in astrology, which is really fun, is that people's moon signs, which represent, the body of the person who brought them into this world, a lot of the times they'll be like, wait, my moon's in Gemini, my mom's a Gemini, or my moon's in Virgo, my mom's a Virgo, like things like that. And I'm like, yep, that happens all the time. And it's very cool and it's fun. So the moon is how you're going to carry out your soul's work on a daily basis. And then we come to the rising. And the rising sign, which is this AS here, it's where the horizon line was when you were born. So it's how the dawn greets the day and how we greet the world. And your rising sign is how you move in the world, how people perceive you, your sense of self, your identity, who you understand yourself to be. And also, your rising is more what you're like when you're going to work or walking to a party, when we used to do that, hopefully again soon. And your moon's more what you're like when you're chilling on the couch, at home with your loved ones, being more vulnerable and more, your like interior self.
I have to say that I'm sorry, you are the reason why I am interested in this. You introduced me to this, and I have to say that when you were like, what's your rising and what's your moon, and I said I didn't know, and then you pulled it up and I found out I was a double Cancer, that was so validating and made so much sense, and I just would never have known unless it was you. And then, like, looking back on my life, I was always friends with Cancers. Like, I was always friends with people whose sun sign was Cancer because they were like emotional and nurturing, and just knowing that that's like who I was as well was just so validating. And I think it's I think this talking about these three aspects is just so illuminating for people. So I'm so glad that you are doing this.
It is, and just the big three, just the luminaries, give you so much insight. And can I talk a little bit about your son too?
Oh yeah, sure.
So you have your sun in Aries, right? Your
Mhm.
fierce and bold Aries. But if you're just reading your sun sign and you're like, I'm an Aries, but you're an Aries double Cancer, your moon is at home in Cancer, and then your Cancer rising being ruled by that very potent moon, that's a lot of big feelings and emotions. So if you're constantly told like you just want to go forth and conquer, you just want to like develop,
Right.
bravery and courage and be a warrior, there's a part of you that is so bad ass and bold and brave and all of that stuff. Like I see your Aries fire and I appreciate it. It's fun, but you were missing that really heavy emphasis on water and emotions and
Yeah.
intuition and feelings. And so then
And weeping in the corner. Yeah.
a lot of crying with that. Moon
Yes.
ascendant, because
Yes.
the first house, planets in the first house, we're really identified with them. They really speak to how we're going to get our sense of self and also what people are going to perceive on us. So when you have your moon in the first, you're like wearing your heart on your sleeve. And so it's hard there's not a lot of poker face with that. It's hard to hide your feelings, especially if they're like big feelings with the water signs. And so yeah, I'm really glad that you found that validating. And that's also been my experience too. So when we look at Barack Obama and we see that, he has his ascendant in Aquarius and Jupiter is present in Aquarius. Okay, so right now Barack is having his Jupiter return. That's very cool. And also Aquarius is the sign of the higher mind, the humanitarian, the one who is concerned with the collective, with innovating structures in order to improve society for everyone. They're the architect of the new society that can kind of download the blueprint for the world that we need to live in and then like offer it to us. And, Barack Obama, like, broke through barriers being the first African-American president. And like, I, remember what a reach it felt like when he first started running. And then the like amazing like achievement of like, we're now inhabiting the world that I wanted to live in that I didn't know was possible, and having Jupiter, who is the greater benefic, the giver of gifts, the bringer of blessings, the judge, the sage, the wise one, the one who has that kind of higher authority, and being a constitutional law. I don't know if I think he was a professor, an expert, he's an attorney. He has this really strong background and training in the law and ethics. We see that, we see the best of Barack Obama when we meet him. We see that wisdom and that authority. And obviously people project onto him a lot of different things, but from the chart, having Jupiter in the first house kind of means you're leading with the goods, and the goods are front and center, and they have more power and juice, because any house that is on what we call an angle is any planet that's on an angle is going to have more power in the chart. And that's something we can get into later. But so elementally, and again, I approach astrology from a healing perspective. So, and as someone who is interested in, I think witchcraft and Wicca was like the first spirituality that I really connected with in terms of the earth. And I was raised Catholic, but it didn't feel like home. And that really felt like home when I found it when I was a teenager. I always look at things elementally, and I look at them kind of like at their base, like, because that's what we're made out of. We're made out of 4 elements. So when we look at Barack's chart, we see Barack Obama is sun in fire and with Leo, and then moon in air, and then rising in air. So he's a double air, and air and fire works really well together. You know, the oxygen feeds the fire, so his soul and his spirit is going to have this like big platform to express through who he is as an Aquarius rising, and his Gemini moon is going to allow him to authentically share of himself in a way that feels like personal and conversational and friendly. And then you know, there's just that dance that we see with fire and air, with like fireworks and all of these things, where it can just be really joyful and celebratory. And air signs have a really strong emphasis on ideals, and you know, what is like the motivation behind being human. And a lot of the times it's like this kind of aspiring towards things that are divine, towards peace and justice and equality and harmony and egalitarianism, and kind of, you know, things that are really challenging to embody on earth. We're coming up on the equinox, on the vernal equinox, in a few days, and we're at the end of Pisces season, and the sun will move into Aries, and
Thank
there's
God.
thank God for you as an Aries. I can't wait to celebrate your birthday. But and depending on your chart and where your rising is, it's going to determine the kind of relationship you have to different astrological seasons. So some people are like, yay, Aries season, I'm an Aries rising, I'm an Aries sun, or whatever. And other people are like, oh gosh, Aries, because of what that sun is going to light up in their chart. So that's another reason why you want to get personalized reading, or start to learn your chart yourself and do it online. And there's a lot of really great websites, because then you start to understand like, oh, this is going to be the sweet spot. And again, like magnifying what's good and being able to accept what's challenging can be done on a monthly basis. It can even be done on a daily basis, which is why we have, you know, daily horoscopes and mundane astrology. But, you know, for thinking about the fact that we have in our imperfect Gregorian calendar 365 days of the year, and only 2 of those days there's a balance between day and night. All the other days there's a fluctuation between nighttime and daytime, and the light might be winning, or the darkness might be more prominent. And when the sun moves into Aries, it kicks into the solar time of the year, and the solar time of the year is when there's more daylight than night, and humans tend to enjoy that more, because the sun, not in excess it will poison us and make us sick and harm us and can kill us, but like the sun generally makes us happy. You know, it makes us feel good. It is the bringer of light and life into the world. There would be nothing on earth without the sun, without it warming us up. So we're about to kick into the solar time of the year, and people are going to be more extroverted. They're going to be going outside. They'll be spending more time outdoors. They'll be interacting with other folks more. So it's important just to remember that balance and harmony and things being perfectly equal is only achieved very rarely on earth, but we do get glimpses, and those days are really sacred. You know, for ancient people, they were very sacred, and they're very sacred for those who observe with our paganism now, because they give us a way of kind of being with that energy and sitting in it, meditating with it, embodying it, trying to bring that energy into the earth. And you know, one of, I think, the really beautiful things that I was told when I have asked spiritual practitioners, and this was a nun, so this wasn't somebody who you know, I don't really share that faith anymore, but when I was asking her, you know, how can you believe in all of these things about, how can you stay with your faith when there's so many bad things happen on earth? And she said, we're really here to bring God's love onto the earth. to be channels for that love. And so I really believe that. And I think the equinoxes give us that beautiful opportunity to kind of sit in that. And like I said, there's a whole cosmology to astrology. There's nutrition, there's magical practices, there's mythology. So when we start to move towards an understanding of our chart, it opens up all of these worlds that you can spend a lifetime and lifetime studying. And so I hope that little snapshot gives a good kind of basis and overview for folks to understand. It's complex, but it's accessible. And yeah, if you want to learn more, you know, there's classes, I teach classes, there's readings, you can get readings from anyone you feel really excited about. And or some people have like a waiting list, or some people don't do readings, but there's lots of ways to learn about astrology. And I really encourage folks to go towards what excites them about it.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I appreciate your expertise and just your generosity in talking through all this. I think so. If people like want to know right now what their rising and their moons are, they can go to one of like a website. They can
Astro.com. Yeah,
yeah,
astro.com. And you just
okay.
need to know the time of your birth, which if you don't know, ask a parent, look at your birth certificate, check your hospital baby bracelet. Those are the places that folks have good luck finding it.
Okay, yeah. And then, but I think just based on, you know, kind of dabbling online with this and then having the experience of sitting down with the reading for you, for me as someone who's like freaks myself out and just wants to like dig into the worst possible scenarios. I think getting the information online can sometimes be overwhelming because you don't necessarily like, it's interesting, right? And it's helpful to know, but you don't necessarily have like the interpretation. And what I really appreciated about my reading with you was that, you know, you just approach it the same way you approach life. You have a lot of compassion, you have a lot of wisdom. You can really embrace the nuance. And I think having someone who's kind of trained to see the bigger picture, if you're just stepping into this, can be really, really helpful in translating and interpreting, and also just like quelling some of your fears. Because I think like with anything that we're dipping our feet into, at least for me, I tend to go in the deep end too fast and then I need a life preserver.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
WebMD. If you
That's exactly what
if you're like, I have this pain in my stomach, and you go on WebMD, it's like, it could be this, it could be that, it could be something fatal. And so then you talk to your doctor, or you, if you're me, text your best friend who's an NP and bother her. And that's why I don't mind when some of my friends text me with their astrology crises. But yeah, you want to talk to someone who has a more complete and full and nuanced understanding. And also, you know, the chart is always revealing itself to us. This is, as human beings, we continue to grow throughout our lifetime. We're really lucky, and it's a really amazing process. But it is an, as I said, it's an esoteric art, and to me, it's a mystery school. So you don't get initiated into the mysteries just by Googling. You got to put in a little time and effort into it. And so, you know, one of the things I think about capitalism that kind of makes us think that we can order things up, you know, and I have like a bad habit of just buying every book I want to read. And then do I have the time to read those books?
Right.
But the point is that your chart, if you want to learn astrology, the world will teach you about astrology. And you just pay attention to the seasons will teach you about astrology. I mean, it's really amazing. So yeah, I do think it's a really beautiful invitation into presence. And I'm sure that just little introduction will open up a lot of questions for folks. But you know, just wanted to provide a foundation and a basis for understanding when I'm talking about the chart. Please understand it looks different for everyone. Everyone has a different configuration. Even the person who was born at the same time in the hospital next to you is having a different experience of that chart. So the really amazing thing is, yeah, there's never been anyone exactly like you on Earth before, and there never will again. So astrology helps us to understand the unique individual that we are and how to bring about our highest and best, which again doesn't mean how to be happy all day, every day, but how to live a life that's truly meaningful. And I think it's a great blessing for that reason.
Perfect way to end this. Thanks,
Fabulous.
bud.
Yeah, so good to talk to you. And if folks want to learn more about my astrology practice, I'm at Laura Campagna astrology.com. And I believe you just came out with another really beautiful blog post on your blog, A Thoroughly Mediocre Depression, which is a title that still makes me laugh. So I am going to look forward to our next conversation where you kind of unpack some fundamentals of therapeutics for us. And I think that's going to be really amazing for all of the astro heads who don't have the psychology background that you bring.
Yeah, I think there's so much overlap, and I was thinking that while you were talking, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.